Welcome back to Zelda's Deepest Lore. In this episode, we'll be discussing Zelda II, The Adventure of Link. Released for the Famicom in 1987, it was the first sequel in the Legend of Zelda franchise. The game is best known today for how weird it was. It's the only Zelda game to have exclusively 2D platforming sections for combat and dungeon crawling. It is considered to be one of, if not the hardest game in the series. This is actually the second time I've made this video, the first being on my old channel. The story starts a few years after the end of the last game. Zelda, now free from Ganon's clutches, has taken over the Kingdom of Hyrule. It is working to rebuild it after the devastation wrought on it by Ganon's minions. Link, now heralded a hero, is doing his best to help as well. But everything changed on Link's 16th birthday. On that day, a mark appeared on the back of Link's left hand. 3 golden triangles. Upon seeing this strange occurrence, he went to Impa, Zelda's wise old nursemaid, who told him that the mark meant that he was a hero of prophecy. This is, of course, the symbol of the Triforce, and would see continued use in later games to mark the vessel of the spirit of the hero. That was how Impa recognized it, and she knew of that symbol in conjunction with a legend passed down through her family for generations. Long ago, there was a wise and noble king who ruled Hyrule. He wielded the Triforce in its entirety and was well loved. However, upon his death, the heir, the king's son, was only able to wield a portion of the Triforce. Searching for the rest of what he considered to be his birthright, he learned from a wizard that the king had told the location of the Triforce to his daughter, the prince's younger sister, a girl by the name of Zelda. The two went to question the Princess Zelda, but she refused to give away the location of the rest of the Triforce. Angered, the magician cast a spell to put Zelda into an eternal slumber. The prince tried to stop him, but was unable to, as, with his dying breath, the sorcerer sealed the curse on the young maiden. There are some theories that this sorcerer is somehow related to Ganon, possibly something similar to Aghanim from Link to the Past, but this theory remains without much in the way of actual evidence. Distraught, the regretful prince sealed his sleeping sister inside the North Castle, and proclaimed that every royal princess from then on would be named Zelda, in honor of his sister. At the time, she was referred to as Princess Zelda I, and this tale came to be known as the Legend of Zelda, the original namesake of this series. And in that castle, the quote-unquote original princess remained to this day, still under the curse, her location only known to the Impa family. While this story is given as background for the naming of Princess Zelda, we will later come to find that this tradition far predates the woman we know at this point as Princess Zelda I. Upon entering the sealed chamber in an ancient castle, the two came across the sleeping princess. There, Impa gave Link 6 small crystals and an ancient scroll, on which was written a message in a language lost to time. However, Link found that he could read it easily, as if the scroll was speaking to him. Apparently written by the ancient king, the scroll said that, while he kept the Triforce of Power and Wisdom in Hyrule, he sealed away the Triforce of Courage for the next worthy wielder, who himself would become a king of Hyrule. In order to gain its power, Link had to travel far beyond the lands he knew. In his first adventure, Link had traveled through what was known as the Death Mountain region of Hyrule, but that was only a portion of the once continent-spanning kingdom. Far more of the world was opened up to him, and Link needed to enter 6 temples scattered around this much larger map, defeat their guardians, and place a crystal into a statue within each temple. Upon placing all 6 crystals, the barrier around the Valley of Death would open, allowing him to enter the Great Temple for his final test. But his quest would not go without trouble. Ganon's minions had learned that they could resurrect their master with the blood of the one who killed him, that being Link. So what was left of his demonic army spread throughout Hyrule in order to kill Link and reawaken the Demon King. While this is the first time we've seen anyone attempt to resurrect Ganon, this is another thing that becomes a recurring theme throughout the series, with the resurrection being attempted again in the Oracle duology, and many other games which feature a depowered or sealed away Ganon, such as A Link to the Past, Wind Waker, Four Swords Adventures, and many more. I want to specifically draw a connection with the Oracle games here, as the use of a blood sacrifice to revive the Demon King seems very similar to the true ending of those titles, though we'll discuss it more when we get to them. However, despite the trials and those who wished to do him harm, Link made it to the Valley of Death, not only defeating its guardian, the Thunderbird, but also proving his own abilities and worthiness by defeating a shadow form of himself, known as Dark Link. This would be the first boss with such a name in the series, but it too would become a recurring element for many games to come. Having defeated his dark side, and already holding the Triforces of Power and Wisdom from his previous adventure, he claimed the third piece of the Golden Power. This has fantastic implications based on reveals shown later in the series, which may actually require its own episode to discuss in the context of the adventure of Link. Using this power, he awakened the sleeping princess, and, fulfilling the old king's wishes, he presumably married one of the two Princess Zeldas. I like to imagine Zelda the First, and Link lived out the rest of his days as the king of all Hyrule. This game really opened up the world of Hyrule, in a very literal sense. Compared to the original game, Zelda II covers a massive expanse of area. If you want to see just how big the map is, let's look at this tiny corner down here. Do you see that area? Does it look familiar? Good, because that's the map of the original Zelda 1. That area as a whole is referred to as Death Mountain, which is also the name of Ganon's fortress in Zelda 1, and will continue to be a name heard throughout the Zelda series. One thing Zelda 2 includes that the first game didn't was towns. There are 8 villages around the map, the names of which you can see listed on the screen. Out of these villages, 6 of them share names with notable characters, mostly political leaders from Ocarina of Time. In universe, it's generally agreed that the villages were named after said characters. The other 2, New and Old Kazuto Town, don't have a namesake we're aware of yet in the games. Some sources claim Kazuto to be a sage still unknown, but as this is not shown in the games, we have no reason to accept those claims. While we're talking about expanding Hyrule, we also need to go back to discussions of religion from our previous Zelda video. There, we discussed how the religion of Hyrule had symbolism similar to that of Christianity in our world. This remains mostly true in this title, with a new item called the Cross, which allows Link to see invisible enemies. I don't think I need to explain why a literal cross item is related to Christian symbolism. The other item worth mentioning, however, is far more interesting. The Trophy. It's a quest item found early in the game, having been stolen from the town of Rudo. It can be easily retrieved from a cave nearby, but if you look closely, the trophy looks like a humanoid statue with wings. Indeed, the name trophy only comes from the English translation. In Japanese, it was called the goddess statue. This is a complete departure from Christianity. While the statue does look vaguely angelic, the Christian god is almost always depicted as masculine, and features no other gods. As such, this is the first time that something related to religion and cosmology in the Zelda series has stepped away from those Christian roots. This actually ties very strongly into the Hyrulean religion seen in later games, with this goddess statue being a dead ringer for the much larger statue of the same name that featured in Skyward Sword, and featured the goddess Hylia. It appears that this item too is meant to appear in the visage of Hylia. All that discussion out of the way, there's only one other game in our timeline right now, and this game is explicitly stated in the manual to be a sequel to that one. So that puts this game right after the first Zelda. Don't you worry, the timeline will become confusing eventually. We just haven't reached that point yet. As you can see, much like many other second games in large Nintendo franchises, Zelda 2 plays very differently from any other game in the series. It makes no sense to have come out after the first game, and is referred to as the black sheep of the franchise. And yet, it introduced so much of what we now connect to the Zelda series. Without this game, the Zelda franchise would be very different, both thematically and story-wise. Even if the gameplay is jarring, I feel that this title is a must-play for any Zelda fan out there, even if you don't necessarily need to get all the way through it. I hope this video got you interested in seeing what this game has to offer. As usual, special thanks to my editors and my sources, which you can see in the description. And with that, I'll see you in the next chapter.